Well, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect day for hot chocolate. I landed this morning and it was snowy and icy out, so.
It is indeed. Yeah, I was cleaning snow off the car this morning, bringing the kids to school, so.
Isn't that the worst?
But I've been waiting for my hot chocolate for now. So.
Well, cheers. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
It's been what, 7 years?
It's been way too long, yeah, about that.
I think that's what I love about this industry though. Like, 7 years could go by and we could just pick up just like we just left off, you know? And I've had that happen so many times throughout my career, and I love that about this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when we recently connected, I felt like it was just the other day that we had last chatted. So I can't believe it's actually been that long. Yeah,
well, I'm very excited to hear about what you're doing now, which seems a little different than when I left you 7 years ago. So I want to talk about your job, I want to talk about your journey, but first, I want to say your title, because I got a kick out of looking at your title on LinkedIn. So I'm going to read your title out loud here. Sure. Dan Kessler, Strategic Alliances Integration Leader, Global Marketing Campaigns, Dell B2B, B2C, and Garmin. So you got a lot on your plate.
I do, yeah. So it's funny. That's kind of what I'm doing these days. And it's funny, you know, it started as a little bit less than that, as it typically does, right? So I had started, when we last connected, I was part of at that point, I'd call it our data center global campaigns team. Okay.
Why don't you explain what global campaigns means? So
global campaigns is how do we kind of lure folks into the market, bring folks to our Dell.com landing page, and we do that through different avenues. Some are paid media, some are content, things like that. When we met, I was working on the content team, driving that team, and we were building a lot of third-party research content. And so when I was on that team, I was kind of ready to kind of shift roles, and there was an opportunity that came up with partner marketing. And so this role initially started with doing more of that data center lens of partner marketing and really focus on those kind of again, those data center type products like servers and storage and cloud and things like that.
Is that a role that you applied for? Did they handpick you? Like, what did that move look like for you personally?
It's a good question. So at the time, I was kind of ready to take something new, and the role had been open for a little while. It was a brand new role. It had never been created before within the Global Campaigns organization. What I will say is there's a whole big global alliances and partner management organization at Dell Technologies. There are whole teams of people dedicated to each partner. And so really we were looking for somebody specifically in the campaigns org to look after, how do we bring in our partners in the right way to our global campaigns. And so the role was really focused on that data center lens. Based off of what our org structure looked like at the time. Okay. And then, about maybe a year or so later, we introduced client, which was still part of business, and we were focused on really MB+, and so brought in that client aspect of it. And then I'd say about 2 years ago almost, we had a big restructure where we brought all global campaigns under kind of one roof, as I like to call it, which includes, all business, so SB+, consumer, gaming, and then there's a team that's really focused on things that we do across all, which is Pandel. And so at that point in time, I expanded my role, and on LinkedIn you like to show what are you doing that's different? And I was going to say, I'm still doing the same thing. So I was like, all right, how can I make this look like it's a big beefy role that does all the things I'm doing? So there you go.
It's funny because I feel like in my experience working with partner marketers, they wear many hats, and I think that's very clear in your title and your description. That Dell is a big portfolio of products, absolutely, right? And to manage that across multiple partners, I'd love to just dive in a little bit more about what you're doing. But let's go back that journey. So you went from non-partner to partner. What was that like? Just dive in, especially in a role that it sounds like it was a brand new role. Maybe it wasn't even thought out, or I don't know. What did that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing was, as I went into the role, I had worked with partners, our strategic alliance partners in the past, right? And I was like, I know a lot about, working with partners. This will be, a really smooth and easy transition. And man, I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, it's not, the world is so big when it comes to partner marketing. There's so much to learn. And so when I moved into that role, I've been really lucky. I've had amazing leaders throughout my career. And I've had the right leader at all the different points in my career. And so the leader that I had at this point in time, she had said, take a quarter and go figure out where you want to focus from a partner marketing perspective. So that's what I did. I went and I interviewed folks within the Global Campaigns organization to kind of find out what are some of the challenges that they encounter, what would they like to help simplify, what are some of the things that they want to learn more about. I met with our field marketing team to kind of understand the same things. What are the things that they're looking for out of this role for me? And then, of course, I met with our partner marketing team, right? So, I work so closely with them. I wouldn't be able to do my job without them. They are, so core to everything that we go and do. So I worked with them. I was building relationships with them. I think the most challenging part was, when I accepted this role and when I started to kind of think about what it was going to be, it was February of 2020. So I went down to Austin, Texas.
Bright future ahead.
Yes,
right?
yeah. I went down to Austin, Texas, and I was kind of explaining what I think my role is going to be. And then I was going to set out to do that 3-month exploration. So I left Austin, Texas on February 28th of 2020.
Oh, geez.
And, with the expectation I was going to, travel a lot down to Austin and meet with our partners and meet with our internal teams to build that relationship. Because, as you know, right? I mean, having that face-to-face time is so important to build the relationships. And then COVID happened and nobody was traveling, right? And so, all those relationships were built over, online meetings, right? Whether it's, Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever it may be.
So I'd love to dig into that a little bit more because I'm a big believer in face-to-face to help not necessarily build relationships, but I believe it does accelerate the rapport process and makes it quicker to get to that relationship standpoint. Like, did it take a little bit longer now that it was all virtual? I guess the one benefit was like there wasn't a choice at that time. Like everybody was virtual. But like, what would that look like as you were trying to build these bridges internally, but everything had to be virtual when you were planning to do it face to face?
Yeah, it was. I would say the first 6 months was probably the most difficult. There were points in time where I said, just conversations with my wife at home. Was this the right move for me? Because again, I think the big thing about working with partners is, you're working with external people from Dell, right? But that's kind of what I had done in my last role, right? That's, I was working with you and others, and so I felt like it would be a really smooth transition, and it was difficult because there was a lot to learn. You had to build the relationships. And at some point after that 6 months of time, something clicked. Mm-hmm. And I think a big part of it was the team that I was working with. We had really great people all around. I mean, I can't say enough about the people that I get to work with on a day-to-day basis. But there were a handful of us initially that, we started joking like that we were just a family. And we were like, I was like, you guys are my other sisters, right? Like, this is how we're gonna, this is a family environment, and we really treated each other that way. And they brought me into everything that they could. They helped guide me to, where to go and learn. There are things that I was trying to learn about. I was trying to learn much more about our technology as a whole. I was taking, trainings about our technology. I was, in discussions with partners, and less so, really being the face of the relationship with the partner, but just kind of sitting in meetings and listening, mm-hmm. and being able to kind of take in everything everybody was saying to try to figure out what was going to be the right approach from a global campaigns perspective.
And I know you said a little bit ago that there's whole teams dedicated to some of these partnerships. So imagine like just picking a partner like Intel. It's not just you talking to Intel. There's probably various folks at Dell talking to Intel, and probably various folks at Intel talking to Dell, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's folks that are, from a partner-specific perspective, whether it's compliance and claiming, whether it's, the kind of partner management piece of it, whether it's, thinking about how do we integrate, Intel across everything that we go and do within the company outside of just global campaigns. There are, product marketing people that are focused on the partners. There are, people from across the marketing, from across the company that are really working directly with them. So it's a big world, and you get to meet a lot of people though, which is pretty cool.
Do you think that, and you don't have to, speak specifically for Dell, because I imagine this is probably similar to every company like Dell and like Intel. Are there challenges where it's like decision by committee and it's hard to move fast and get consensus, or is it the reverse, and that you have so many smart people in the room, you come up with really cool ideas? Like, what does that look like with so many people on both sides trying to get things done?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's It can be a little bit of both, right? I think for a lot of decisions, it's very collaborative, right? That's the whole point of partnership, right? You're bringing a bunch of really smart people together that know, have a whole bunch of different backgrounds and can bring something to the table. And you're in a room and you're talking about what is right for our businesses collectively versus, figuring out what's just right for my business. That's what partnership is all about. So a lot of it is collaborative decisions. Of course, there are some decisions that go to, kind of go up the ladder, right? I'd say for me, I always make sure that any decision that's being made, I have to make sure that that partner management organization is included 100%. I always defer to them. They are, by far who I take my leads from when it comes to partner specific. When it comes to campaigns, obviously I have my campaign leadership team, and again we'll collaborate internally together too to make sure that we're figuring out what's the right thing to do for our business, and then go back to the partner and collaborate on what do we do collectively that works for all of us.
No, it makes sense. All right, so you're part of this larger team working with a partner like Intel. On the campaign teams, what are you responsible for? Like, what are you trying to achieve from an objective standpoint for Dell?
Yeah, so I look at my role as kind of there's different seasons of my role throughout the year. Probably my favorite season, which is the longest one, is our planning season. So, as we get into our fiscal year planning, we are thinking about, what is our campaign strategy going to be for the next fiscal year? And as we're kind of determining what that is, I like to bring our partners in. I like to obviously bring our internal teams in. We kick off this whole kind of planning effort, and kind of going back to what I said earlier about, what I had learned in this journey. And when I met with our field marketing teams, one of the things that they really wanted to see were, what are our partners' priorities, and then how do their priorities align to what it is that we're trying to do from a global campaigns perspective. What vehicles do they like to execute with, and so many other details. And so we build a lot of that information together. There's a whole team of us that do it. It's not just me. It's, again, folks from our partner management organization, folks from our partner product marketing team. We align with, obviously, our campaign strategy team. We align with our portfolio messaging team to really determine, what are our key messages, where do our partners align, and how. That's one of the big things that we work on. That's probably the most fun part of, or my most fun season, busiest season as being in this role.
Interesting, yeah, because I know, one challenge I often hear on the partner marketing side is, you take a company like Dell that might be working with Intel, NVIDIA, AMD. How do you differentiate those programs, right? Like, I assume Dell doesn't want to just swap logos out, right? That does no justice to the partners. So is that where kind of understanding these priorities kind of comes into and telling a unique story? Like,
absolutely.
I'd love to know how you guys approach that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's something that's difficult, but the big thing that I like to focus on in this role is how do we build the right approach to strategically and authentically bring our partners into our global campaigns. In some cases, it's just based on how the creative goes. There's going to be cases where we have to look for what is the right way to bring them in. We want everything to be as authentic as possible. We want to collaborate. Anytime that we're building any creative, we like to review that with our partners and kind of showcase where they fit into that creative. But right, across the industry, if you look at certain lines of business, there are a lot of OEMs and there's a lot of partners and a lot of technology all together, right? Yeah. And so it can make it difficult. I think ultimately you want to look for, how do we differentiate as much as we can? I think that's all you can do. But again, I think it goes back to that collaboration, and really I try to approach it as transparently as possible with all of our partners, because I think that helps us build that trust that we need.
Yeah, and I imagine collaboration also goes internally too. Working with field and all these other organizations you mentioned internally, is it hard to get their input? Are you chasing people all day long? Like, I imagine a lot of it came back to the relationships you built, but they probably don't have to work with you, but it obviously benefits them if they do. Like, what does that part look like when you're trying to chase people down internally and get them to collaborate and work together? Yeah,
it's changed a lot. It's evolved quite a bit since I initially took this role. I mean, when I initially took this role, and we would, I've mentioned the guidance that we build out, there wouldn't be much about kind of, we would work about how, on how our partners would be integrated. But when we talk about the guidance that we'd hand out, there weren't a lot of highlights about those partnerships. I think as we've evolved, not only have we obviously fixed that, but I think the train of thought for everybody that works at Dell has also changed, at least in the campaigns org that I work with. I mean, initially it was, how do we build our partners in, and what is the benefit and all those good things. And then as we I look at this role as a lot of education too, education internally. I educate obviously, the partners on our strategy and, the campaigns overall, but it's also a lot of education internally about, what are the partnerships, why do they matter, why is their technology important, how does it differentiate, the technology that we're putting into market. I think the more education that we were able to give to our creative teams, the more open they were. And it's a lot less of me chasing them down now. It's a lot more of them coming to me and saying, hey, we know that we need to integrate our partners here, and we know we need to do it the right way. What's the right way to do it? And then we pull in all the right people. A lot of it is dot connecting, right? Yeah. Bringing the right people together to have the conversation. Everybody wants to have it. And they want to make sure that we don't get to a point where, we run into any challenges down the road. So everyone's pretty eager.
Now, I love it, the fact that now they're coming to you. Was that an education of, hey, you guys, need to do this to get on board? Or is it more of an education, show them the value of what's going to happen if we start working together and collaborating?
Yeah, it was more of the latter, showing them the value of what happens when we collaborate together. I mean, I think, again, the collaboration is so important. And I feel like everyone has a subjective view to the creative that we're going to kind of put into market and the strategy. And ultimately, our strategy is going to be our strategy, but we need to figure out the right way to bring our partners in. But I think that all of our teams are much more open, because in a lot of cases, there's ways to showcase why we can be better together in some of the things that we go and do.
Yeah. So how are you in your role? What are your success metrics? How are you showing, hey, I'm doing a good job at this?
Yeah. Man, that's a good question too. I think, when we look at the creatives that we do, and that they are performing and how they're performing, if they're performing well, that we are having really positive relationships with our partners. I think that there's a couple different things that we look at. One is we look at how are we evolving in terms of. There's a few different categories that we look at. Ultimately, we look at, how are we driving pipeline and revenue down the funnel, all those good things. Yeah. My success, I feel like, is, making sure that we are connecting the dots, making sure that we are bringing the right partners into the creative, and bring them in at the right time. It's a lot about, I think, making sure that we're having those right conversations. That's really what I try to make sure that we're doing. There's vendor funding dollars at stake all the time, right? I think the big thing that I try to show is that the value is bringing all those right folks together. I kind of look at my role as I'm kind of like the face of global campaigns to our partners and to our internal partner teams, and I'm the face of those partners and that partner team back to global campaigns. That's how I kind of look at the value of this role.
Yeah, no, that's similar to what I keep hearing too, is especially around the positive relationship with the partners. I hear that come up time and time again. Is that, it's got to be somewhat subjective. Is it anecdotal feedback that you're getting from the partners and you're taking that up the chain? I know it's impossible to measure, but how do you report on that, or how do you spread that internally when a partner's happy? Is it just, hey, this is what they're saying, we're seeing more transactions?
I think the big thing for me is seeing that they want to do more together. Right, and so those are some things that we focus on. We do, we try to do some workshops with our partners and figure out, what are the right things to kind of go and do together. When we leave like a quarterly marketing review, right, with all of our executives, Dell and partner related, if everyone's really jazzed about the work that we're doing together, they see, whatever the creative is that's in market. We do have some performance metrics that we share as well. That's what gets them really jazzed, but they also are wanting to do more together. And I think that's really I think that's the big element for me, is seeing that they want to do more.
And are you doing these workshops for the partners that are giving you MDF, or the partners that you're giving MDF to?
So for my role, it's the partners that are giving us MDF
Yeah,
dollars.
interesting, because I'm always, I always thinking about it from the other side, because, if I'm an Intel and I want to give Dell MDF, I want to make sure Dell's using that money, right? The more MDF they're taking, the more we're advertising, the more Intel product we're moving. So it's interesting that you're almost bringing value to Intel, So I guess my question is, if the Intels of the world out there, I hate this, I'm picking on Intel, but anybody, what are things that they should be doing to help partners like Dell? Should they be doing workshops of their own? Are there other things that you think they should be doing to bring value to the Dells of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that in terms of the workshops that we do, and you talked about like MDF, and there's part of the education that I've tried to do internally is there's so many different funding types across the different partnerships. There's earned dollars, there's MDF, which is, I kind of look at it as more of the earned dollars being more of using towards programs that that the partners have. MDF being more of what they write their own checkbooks out of, right? Yeah. And so in terms of how the dollars are used, it's different across different activities. Some dollars are used for, or some types of dollars are used for certain activities, while others are used for others. I think the big thing would be that any partner could do is kind of make sure that we're aligned in our strategies, or highlight where we're aligned in our strategies, highlight what they're doing, what we're doing together, where there's some similarities, and it's not only from a company perspective, but like if you look at, how do our brands line up? How do our campaigns line up? Are we going after the same things? And if there's something that we're not aligned on, let's just kind of keep that off the table, and we'll circle back to it if it makes sense at a future time.
Yeah. Now you're dealing with partners that are highly competitive amongst themselves, right? Especially around the AI space right now. Are you having to be very sensitive and walk a tightrope from one partner to the next? Like, what does that part look like in terms of their competitiveness? And obviously they all want to be number one partner with you. Yeah. How do you navigate that competitiveness?
It's interesting. I think, again, there's a lot of partners in the market. There's a lot of OEMs in the market. I think we try to figure out, what are the kind of key areas where we should be going to market together. So, if you talk about, whether it's AI or any of the other kind of innovation topics, as we like to call them, is there a specific, part of those topics that we want to kind of go to market on together? Obviously we're going to kind of try to differentiate, where we can, right, and show what's kind of best for both of our businesses. But I think that the best thing that we can do is try to differentiate and just kind of have that transparent conversation about, what we're doing across all of our partnerships.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's such a unique space right now, and I always go back to what you said earlier about, understanding the individual priorities of that partner, and, certainly. They all want, driving revenue is probably number one priority, but there's unique priorities within the stories that they're telling. And then, at the end of the day, those might be completely different stories from one competitor to the next. And how I feel like the framework you have set up to tell that story can be very unique.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think the biggest part is, when we talk about our priorities and sharing them and having the right conversation, I think it's going into all those conversations super open, right? Because I think in any relationship, whether it's with partners or whether it's a personal relationship, you want to feel heard and you want to feel understood. And I think that goes for anybody. And so I try to approach it that way. I think a lot of the folks that I have really the opportunity to work with approach it the same way. I try to always hear what each partner is saying, whether there's a challenge or whether there's something that's going really well, right? You want to hear what they have to say. And I want them to hear what I have to say too, right? And we kind of come to a compromise based off of some of those conversations. But, I think if you enter those, super open, that's really what's going to lead to the best collaboration.
Well, it seems like you have it figured out. So I'm going to ask you in a minute about, what challenges that you're either facing personally or you think the industry's facing collectively. But first, if you could go back in time when you first started this, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself in those first, 3 to 6 months when you're trying to figure this out? Whether you figured it out later and you wish you'd done it sooner, or that you just know now that you wish you'd done from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'd first tell myself, like, it's going to be okay. You're going to collectively figure this out with a number of other amazing folks across, the Dell team and across, our partner teams. I think if I had to go back and think about, what I might tell myself to maybe help things move along a little bit quicker, is, quite honestly, I'm kind of glad, just kind of thinking this, I'm glad that I went through what I did, because I went through that education process that helped me really learn about that part of our marketing organization. It helped me educate others. And I still use some of the same things to educate folks. And I think, looking back on some of the things that we did, right? I mean, I went through, like I said, our campaigns team, our field team, our partner team. And as part of that, I tried to understand, there's different partner organizations, whether it's, it's funny, a lot of the confusion that I get often is, do I work in channel marketing or alliances and partner marketing? Yeah. And what is the difference? And so kind of going back, and I think that's one of the things I would maybe build a slide on for folks is talking about, what is the difference and why am I in one versus the other. But I think it's just that education. I'm glad that I went through it. I think, when you go through something hard and you come through on the other side, it makes you stronger. It makes you feel more accomplished that, you were able to go and figure out how to do it. I'd say just kind of stick with it and keep doing what you're doing, because you're on the right path and you're working with the right people.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I just recorded yesterday with our VP of marketing from Foundry, and her advice that she left at the very end was just giving yourself. I think your episode's going to premiere before her, so I'm going to give it away. But but just giving yourself some grace and allowing that challenge to happen. And I really like your answer, because if you didn't go through that stumbling period and just like you said, it's going to be okay, you wouldn't have learned and grown from it. Yeah. Right, like we need that to grow, and I really like that. Yeah. So how are you growing now? What's the challenge now? And again, I don't want you to, necessarily have to say at Dell we're struggling with this. So it can be more, what the industry's facing. But what are the challenges out there?
I think a couple of things I'll say. For me personally, trying to continue to learn and grow. Right. I mean, there's always something new to learn. I'll say that, like I said, I'm working across, what we call Pandel and business and consumer and gaming. There's elements within each of those that I can definitely do a better job of. And I think, taking ownership of, trying to figure out and learn and continue to evolve the how we build our campaigns with our partners within each of those. There's always different opportunities whether it comes to some of the different vehicles that we kind of go to market with. So, one of the things that we've done a lot more of this year is social. Mm-hmm. We have a great social team within we have multiple social teams. We have a great, business social team within Dell. We have a great social team within Global Campaigns. And we're trying some different things. We're doing some new things. Just having a better understanding of things like that. Better education on, those vehicles, better education on some of those segments specifically, I think is something that can help me grow. Continue to build the relationships. I think one of the things I find is that across all of our partners, right, there's always going to be change, whether it's within Dell or within the partners. And so I think that's often one of the biggest challenges is how do you continue to keep that momentum going, even when there's changes in the folks that you're working with. And I think that, and we've had this with one of our partners recently. There was a change in some of their leadership about a year or so ago, and we continue to have great collaboration, and I think it says a lot about the partnerships that we've been able to make, is that we're able to continue doing that.
Now, in terms of the partnerships you've been able to make, is face-to-face coming back to help strengthen some of those relationships? Are you still doing everything virtually? A mix of both?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to go down to Austin probably about twice a year. Yeah. And I went to Dell Technologies World last year. I'm hoping to go again this year. No word on that just yet. But, I think the FaceTime, you can't, there's nothing that's better than the FaceTime, right? I mean, we kind of deal with being able to build the relationships over, Zoom and Teams and whatever it may be. I think in person, it's just a different element. There's, when you're meeting in your office at home or at work and you're, virtually connecting with somebody, there isn't that opportunity outside of the first 5 minutes of the call, right, to catch up on, family, kids, what are you doing in your personal life on the weekends, all those kinds of things. When you are able to get together in person and, go out for a drink or go out for dinner or just have that extended time, there was somebody I met with in Austin, I think it was back in, I think it was late last year. We went down, we got some hot chocolate, and that's my thing. I'm a hot chocolate guy. And we just kind of chatted, she told me about her kids and her family, what she used to do before she worked at the partner that she's working for now. And we were able to exchange some stories. And that to me is how you really build the true relationships. I mean, you have the working relationship and you kind of show, different teams, what it is that you're working on and how you're bringing something to the table, and the same thing for them. But again, you can't, nothing can overtake that in person.
It's so true. I mean, I think some of the best business deals I've ever done have come from walking to the meeting or walking out of the meeting. Back to the lobby, and then on the personal note, I mean, as someone on the sales side, I feel like I cannot fully advocate for a customer unless I really know them. Like, we can do a transactional deal all day long, but if we're really going to go out and do great things, like, there's got to be some sort of deeper connection. And a lot of that comes from what you're just saying. Like, who are you as a person? What do you value? How do you like to work? Like, what's important to you? And then, you get that mutual respect, and then you go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, I think whenever I think about being in person, I think back to something when I was an intern for what was EMC, which obviously EMC was acquired by Dell. Yeah. I was an intern, and big snowstorm. We were having a global marketing meeting. People were flying in from all over the world. This was back in 2007, 6, 7 maybe, I don't know. And we were trying to print these marketing booklets. And at that point in time, like our I think it was our, whoever was doing our printing back then, they weren't able to come into the office because of the snowstorm. I had called a company and asked them if they could help us do it, just, a local retail store. And they had said no over the phone. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go out. I'm going to go over there and see if they'll do it. It's hard to turn somebody away in person. Sure enough, right? They printed them there. They were done by the end of the day. And
just because you showed up.
Just because I showed up,
yeah.
Right? There's something to be said about being in person.
It is. It's so true. I mean, I think it's harder to say no. And I think people's just, their barriers come down a little bit, right? They realize you're not just, a screen. Half the time, some of them might not even be looking at you. They could have their email up or something, right? And just to have that one-on-one, I think it's a much deeper connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, without your boss watching this and saying you're ready for that promotion, where do you go from here? Like, what do you hope that next level is? What do you want to be doing, a couple years from now? Is it still in partner? Is it a different level with partner? Like, what does that look like?
Oh, man, that's the hardest question. Anytime anybody asks me that, I kind of stiffen up because I'm not, it's hard to tell. I've really enjoyed what I'm doing. Yeah. I think, this role has expanded a couple times now. So, is there an opportunity?
Your title can't expand any further. Though.
I know.
You're max there.
Can we maybe add a few more acronyms or something onto it? I think there's different ways that it could potentially expand. Maybe, I don't know. I think, and it's funny, I caught up every once in a while. I try to keep in touch with all my old leaders, and again, I've been so lucky to have such good leaders, and I'm still able to connect with them all. One of them had asked me, have I figured out what I want to do when I grow up yet? Or, have I still not? It's hard. I mean, I think I've had the opportunity to connect with some folks a little higher up that have asked me some similar questions, and they say, just look at any role and say, like, do I want this role? And, I think when I look at some of our executives and some of the things that they're able to do and being able to witness them in action and the conversations that they have, I'm like, man, I wish I would love to be able to do that someday. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what that would be at this point, but for now, I'm really happy where I am. I think, the technology industry right now has been tough for the last year or so anyways. So happy that I'm at Dell Technologies, happy I'm where I'm at, and, feel really thankful. But yeah, always, looking to see what I can do next. And I think part of it is having, continued career conversations with leaders, whether it's my leader or my leader's leader or my leader's leader's leader, I think, and all of that has been on the table, and I've been able to do all of that, which has been really helpful. Yeah, it doesn't answer your question.
No,
but,
it's, first of all, I think Dell's very similar to IDG Foundry in that, people of Dell have been there for a long time. Same thing here. Like, I've been here 12 years. My boss has been here, 20-something years. They're
17.
Yeah, 17. Wow.
Through internships. Internships count. So
yeah. No, and yeah. So I mean, it's good to be at a place that allows you to grow within the organization. You know, and it's funny you say that. You know, trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Like that's how I feel too. You know, and I'm starting to learn it's not something you ever necessarily reach. It's, you know, if you're doing something you love, it's just constantly evolving, and that's kind of where I've been. You know, and I'm running a big sales team, and all of a sudden now I'm doing a podcast, and you know I'm kind of an SME on the partner side, and it's just every couple of years it kind of evolves a little bit, and I'm learning to accept that and try to accelerate within that framework, you know, professionally.
Yeah, I think, you know, your career journey takes you where it takes you. I mean, a lot of it is, you know, you have to figure out what are the things you want to do, and you know, because otherwise you don't want it to take you somewhere that you don't want to go, right? But I've been really fortunate up until now to be taken in the direction that I've enjoyed so far, and I'm hoping that again through continued conversations, things like that, it continues to take me in the right direction.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, I don't know if you know that this is coming, but we're going to do a lightning round.
Oh boy, I did not know that. Okay.
I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions. And by the way, I did this with Melissa Nasserino, and my wife told me that I did it wrong. Because I would ask a question and then I'd talk about the answer, and ask a question and then talk about the answer. And my wife goes, "It's a lightning round. It's supposed to be quick."
Oh,
she's like, "You do it this slow thunder round."
I wish you'd said that after this one, but okay.
All right, so just quick and then I'll move on. So, all right, chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Okay. Say good day, mate, in your best Australian accent.
Good day, mate.
I'm just going to keep going.
Terrible, I know, I'm sorry.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Oh, man. Loyal, loving, and collaborator.
If there is a spider in your house, do you kill it?
It depends if my wife's home or not.
If you had an all-expenses-paid trip to Cleveland, would you take it?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah?
Well, if it's in the spring, yeah, I'd go see an Indians game.
Or if it's in the winter.
If it's in the winter, I don't know. I'd go see a Cavs game or a Browns game. Yeah, it depends.
I'd have to think about it. I have family in Cleveland too, so I feel
man.
like I'm allowed to ask that joke.
Fair enough.
Or ask that question.
Fair enough.
Well, Dan, this has been awesome. I have just one last question for you, and that's what piece of advice you want to leave for people on the road?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things that I usually like to tell folks that are younger in their career that I have the opportunity to connect with is, you know, number one, just be kind. Because first of all, you never know what anybody's going through at work. And, you know, I think, you know, when you show people kindness, they show it back to you. And that goes a long way in your career, I think. The other thing I'd say is, you know, this is advice that I got after I didn't get a job earlier in my career. You know, I wasn't looking at my role and how it connected to the greater picture. And being able to connect the dots throughout my career is something that I've tried to pride myself on since I learned that back after I didn't get that job. So be kind and be a dot connector.
I love that. I love that. Well, here, cheers to being kind. I love it.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming on the show, Dan.
Thank you for having me. This was great.